AITAH for telling my sister that my husband said the police wouldn't believe me, subsequently making her nervous of my husband. My husband, M34, is a police sergeant. We have been married for 2 years. He got the rank within those years. I have 25 AM an art history teacher, and also I do paintings on the side, like commissions for people for their weddings, children, pets, that sort of thing. This situation happened last week. My husband got home from work and I was working on a commission, a painting of a wedding venue. My husband was looking at it, touched it a little, complimenting it, and I asked him to give it back, being bashful. He responded with, "Or what?" and I told him I'd call the police, LOL. I know that sounds weird not knowing me, but that wasn't a crazy thing to say. I say dramatic things all the time. He responded by scoffing though, telling me, "And what would they do?" I thought at first he was commenting on the absurdity of calling 911 over a painting, but upon further talk, no. He meant as in what would they do, because of him. I asked him what would they do then, and he answered most likely nothing. No offense, but anything you say, they're going to believe me more. I asked him, well, what would happen if I really needed the police? He literally shrugged and said, happens a lot. Trust me, they'll believe me. I swear it almost was like a threat. I stared at him for a second and then asked him honestly, well, what if you snapped and tried to kill me or something again? Okay, that sounds crazy, but it wasn't. He laughed and shook his head, telling me, baby, I'd never do that. You have nothing to worry about. The whole conversation freaked me out enough that I called my sister that night when he was at the gym. We talked for a while and she told me, yeah, that's incredibly weird, even though it's more likely that he was just joking in a dark way. I agreed and we hung up. Shortly after, she sent me a text that said her husband says weird things too. It's their jobs because her husband is ex-military. Well, my husband saw that text and demanded to know if I told my sister what he said. I admitted I did, and he was so F-king pissed at me. He was very serious that he was just joking and that by sharing that, now he sounds like a lunatic and my sister is probably scared of him. I apologized, but honestly, I don't feel like I did anything wrong here. AITAH here? First comment, I agree for the most part. I just want to add my experience. My sister was in a very similar situation. He'd been abusive for years, but towards the end it escalated and he choked her. It still took another year or two. She stopped telling me things. She didn't want me to bring it up. So I was in the dark for a while. There is nothing that I could have possibly done to get her out sooner. I was supportive to the point of my own detriment. Be supportive by making sure they know that if when they're ready, you will be there to pick them up the second the phone rings. That's what happened in the end of my sister's relationship. I had given up trying to actively help her. But one day she called and that was it. She knew she had support and an escape. But I couldn't be that until she was ready to escape. Or anyone else in a similar situation shouldn't put the blame on themselves. It's like blaming yourself for someone else's suicide. It helps no one. Second comment, babe. He wasn't joking. I don't care what he told you. When he brought it up apropos of nothing, that tells you he wasn't kidding. When he doubled down in the convo, that made me feel more nervous. That was bad. But when he got angry, babe, he's a F-king liar who has definitely considered hurting you. Not trying to freak you out, but if a person is joking, they're joking. Look at it this way, if you told someone in a lesser position of power than you, all the stuff he said, and you found out they felt a little off, would you be angry or mortified? Which one, babe? BC, I think I know. His anger is the worst indicator of all. Add that to he is checking your texts daily? Why? Look, the good news is you have it on record. Now, you need to screenshot all of it and pendle it to yourself. In an email he doesn't know about. Make sure you delete the contact so the number to your sister is shown. So the thread is clear. Just a precaution. Also the age gap. You were 23 and he was 32 when you married, but when did you begin dating BC? That's another for power imbalance. Third comment, as a former child of police officers, technically 2 stepdads. First one got with my mom when I was 9 months. Your husband ain't lying. My first stepdad was a lieutenant military man and he ran the family like one. He also regularly beat my mother and badly. Used to tell her he could kill her and get away with it. BC, he knows what they look for. Even told her how he would do it and dispose of her. They truly are like a band of brothers. They will protect their own above everyone. Whenever my mom called, they would show up and were always on his side. Didn't matter that she was standing there with a busted face and blood running from her head. They all knew what he was doing. With 4 young children in the house, and they didn't do a damn thing. My mom said only one officer ever tried to help her, and the entire precinct basically iced him out for it. My second stepdad briefly joined his precinct before they knew each other, and they all told him about our house, and told him to stay out of it and look the other way. Hell. They went on a honeymoon with a fellow officer and his wife. A cruise. When they were on one of the islands, he beat her to a pulp and tried to leave her there, and the others did nothing. They wrote a GD article in the newspaper about how he was a pillar of the community. My second dad was a lot better, but they did have a spat once. Cops just kept questioning her, trying to trip her up in her story. It was infuriating to watch. Truth is, the profession attracts a lot of power-hungry, narcissistic people. There are good ones out there, but it's definitely you never go against the family mentality. Fourth comment, I have a different take. I think he is disgruntled over the blue wall. His scoffing wasn't at you, but at reality. It's worth a revisit for your sake of mind. Ask him what he thinks of a code of silence and DV in his profession. You're right to have spidey senses and a tingle of fear. Because it is a fearful thing, he's also right. They'd cover for him. I think in his own way, he may have been expressing a sentiment that is frequently forbidden. The darkness of his comments probably did exist. He probably did sound ominous. Maybe there's an officer he knows is beating his wife, and he feels like he can't say anything as a lone voice. Speaking out against another officer carries unfair repercussions. NTA, you have every right to talk out the conversation with a trusted source. But I'm not sure he's either. Nor does anyone suck here. My hot take: this seriously needs a conversational revisit. No hypotheticals, no what-ifs. Straightforward: is this happening in your job? Do you approve of it? And if he doesn't give you the answers that make you comfortable, read The Gift of Fear and run. It will save your life. Fifth comment, NTA. I'm not as confident as others that you're actually in danger, but you're definitely NTA. What he was telling you is true. If anything ever did happen between you two, his coworkers would take his side. That's what cops do. It's possible he was just acknowledging that truth and was surprised you didn't already know. To be honest, I'm surprised you didn't already know, because it's a pretty broad societal problem. Even if you're not, like a believer in defund the police or any of that, it's pretty widely acknowledged that there's a cultural problem in police departments around the thin blue line, back the blue, band of brothers. Chase T, where cops are far too quick to cover up and excuse each other's misdeeds. Maybe your husband is one of the good ones, but it's still a thing. I can also understand why he would feel upset after realizing that the comment had been relayed in a way that indicated you were scared, and that made him possibly seem scary to others when he wasn't there to defend himself. If I made some dumb joke and found out my partner took it seriously and started relaying that interpretation to others in a way that made me seem potentially evil or dangerous, I'd absolutely be upset. But you know what else I'd probably be? Ashamed. I never want to scare anyone I care about, especially not the love of my life. If I found out she got scared by a joke of mine, I'd likely have a lot of soul searching to do to figure out how I could more clearly and thoroughly communicate my love to her, and what behaviors of mine might be contributing to her perception of me as a threat. Is your husband doing that self-work? If not, that's a much bigger red flag than the joke itself. You should at least ask yourself, if not him, imagine if one of his co-workers committed domestic violence against their wife and your husband was the one who arrived on scene to handle it. Based on what he said, do you think it's likely that he would believe his co-worker and fail to protect that woman? And if so, does that influence the way you see him as a partner for yourself? Once, I chased off a neighborhood cat that was hanging around our bird feeder. After that, the cat treated my partner as a friend, but would get scared and run away anytime I showed up. I actually had to talk to my therapist about it for a few minutes. That's how badly I don't want to be a scary person. A stray cat who I never touched made me feel guilty,